Hello, today we're going to talk about distributions of data. This is chapter 12.3 and we're on pages 764 to 770. Alright, most of what is in this video is going to be review. There's just going to be a few more tricks I show you with the calculator, how to make a histogram with your calculator, how to make a box and whiskers plot with your calculator, and what are all those numbers in a box and whisker plot mean. So this is going to be, again, copy the notes. There's going to be a little more notes in this one than there was in the last video. And then the problems, you're going to take the data from your calculator that you get and then draw your histogram or box and whisker plot from the calculator. Okay? And then again, ask a question about the lesson afterwards. So let's get started. Distribution of data. So we can take all the data that we got from, like, say, the stuff in chapter 12.2, and we can make a histogram out of it. All right, histogram is essentially a bar graph. All right, with frequencies of where numbers fall between. Now, the key thing here, the key idea here, is that the data can be skewed. This is a negatively skewed graph, and you're probably looking at it and going, "That looks positively skewed to me." But what's happening here is most of the data lies here, but these outliers are pulling the mean back. So it's making your average look lower than it probably should be because of these outliers. So these few values here are pulling our average back towards the negative side. This is a symmetric distribution. So our mean and median are probably about the same or very close. Okay. And what you want to look at here is we gradually go up and then a steep fall off for a negatively skewed distribution. We kind of gradually go up and gradually come down in symmetric. And then for our positively skewed data is we're kind of accelerating or we're moving up very fast and then gradually coming down the hill here. And this is positively skewed because, again, most of our data is packed in here, but these few outliers are pulling our mean this way. So our mean actually looks higher than it probably should be. Okay, and that'll get us into what type of statistics we should use to measure this. Okay, and that's going to be the last part of the video. All right, and then we can do the same thing with box and whisker plots. I'll talk about the skews in another slide. What I wanted to talk to you about were these guys here, these points that you're going to graph. Okay, you're going to graph these points and then you connect the dots. But what do these points mean? Well, the first point here is the minimum. So you'd put all your data in order and you'd find the smallest value. Okay, and then obviously the other end of your whisker, so these are the whiskers by the way, is the maximum. So when all your data is in order, the maximum value is this dot. And we have the lower quartile, what ends up being, let me talk about this first. We have the median, so this is the very middle of the data. And the first quartile, or the lower quartile, Q1, is the median of the data between here and here. And then that's kind of the same for the third. The upper quartile is the median, the middle value, between here and the maximum. All right. The key thing to remember is that 25% of your data falls between the minimum and the first quartile. 25% of your data falls between Q1 and Q2, and you can see the breakdown is the same. What your book often asks you to do is say that 50% of the data falls between whatever value this is. Let's say it was like 47, and let's say Q3 was 53. We could say 53% of the, or 50% of the data falls between 47 and 53. Okay, so this is a box and whisker plots, and we can look at skews as far as that goes as well. Okay, so you may have wanted to go back and pause some of this as I was talking. Same thing back here, and maybe write down increases slowly, and then there's a quick drop off for negatively. So you want to go back and make sure you have those notes. Okay. Now, we're going to try one. So distribution using a histogram. Example 1 is using a histogram. Example 2 is using a box and whiskers. They're really the same idea. It's just a different setup on your calculator. So I'm actually going to do 1 and 2 from this data. And I've already entered this into my calculator. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our calculator. All right, so here we are. And as you can see, I've already entered in all the data. I believe there were 36 data points. Okay. Now this has to do with graphing. So we have to set up our calculator to graph a histogram. And how we do that is we do second, so blue, and then stat plot, that y equals button. And we're pretty much going to be doing just plot 1 right now. All right. And you can see it's already set up for histogram. I'm going to show you how to do that. All right. So, and it is turned on. But anyway, if I want to mess with plot 1, I just hit enter. And I'm in plot 1. It's highlighted here. And I want it to be on. It could be set up here. And you want to make sure you have it on. And then the type of graph you want. Okay, you're usually used to this one, lines being connected. All right. We are going to scroll down or scroll over to histogram, and we're going to hit enter. And you just want to make sure that your L1 is the list we're using. We can change that. I'll show you that later if we need to. All right. So I hit enter. And now to graph this nicely, let me see, make sure you guys can see the buttons on the top. There's kind of nice here. It's a little bright. Oops. There. I think I just took a picture on accident and messed it up. Hold on. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to pause it, and then I'll go back to it. All right. So we're back. I've got the histogram, the bar graph selected. You can see if I kind of try to dim this out a little bit, the middle button at the top is zoom. If you hit that button and scroll down, it's number 9. So if you're pretty comfortable with this, you can just hit the number 9. Zoom stat, we're just going to do that choice. Okay. I hit enter, and it automatically sizes my window to fit into, for the histogram to fit nicely in here. Okay. And when I'm looking at this, I'm seeing that we got a kind of a lot of our data packed into this left end, and then we gradually slope downward. All right, so this is a positively skewed graph. Most of the data is towards the smaller end, and then these outliers here are actually pulling our mean. So if we calculated the mean with this, it would look higher than like if this was test data for me in my classroom. I might use the mean here, which would probably end up somewhere over here, and I could, you could almost fool people and say, hey, look at my mean's really high, when in fact most of the kids did poorly on the test. So that's one way you could look at this data. Okay, and we can still do this, the number summary, right? The calculate the one variable statistics. All right, the mean in this case was 28. Notice we're deviating 7 points, 7 values, 7. I don't know what we were looking at there. We're deviating by 7 here. Okay, and then like I said, we're going to get into some other there's some other options down here that we scroll through. These are the values for your box and whisker plot right here. I just had to hit the down button, but that's not part of this one. So let's go back to stat plot. Okay, so I'm going to hit stat plot again, actually second stat plot. There we go. Now instead of a box and whisker or a histogram, I want to do a box and whisker. Okay, so I'm going to get back into that stat plot, and now this one here is the box and whisker, the one with the line down the middle. So I'm just going to hit down, and I'm going to hit that right arrow until I get to here. So it's all, it feels like you should be able to scroll down. You can't. You hit down into the type, and then you just hit left until you're there. Hit enter, and again, we want that to fit on the screen properly. So we're going to do zoom again. Okay. And again, number 9 was the zoom stat. If you're really good, just hit the number 9. You don't have to scroll down to it. And now you can see that it fits nicely on the screen. Okay. And so here's our box and whisker. So here's the minimum, the maximum, the Q1, the Q2, and the Q3. All right. And I'll show you how to get those numbers from the calculator as well. All right. So let's get back into the PowerPoint. And you can see our graph did look something like that, okay? Depending on how you zoomed in or whatever, it might look slightly different, but that was essentially what our data said, okay? And again, it was positively skewed. Most of our data was here. We did like a big increase. We gradually came down, so these values, which there's not as many, are pulling our mean into a positive direction, so it looks better than it probably should, okay? All right. So again, this skewed data idea. This is what a box and whisker looks like when it's negatively skewed. Okay. Notice that our median is close to the short whisker. Okay. Symmetric, so everything's pretty much even. Doesn't have to be perfect, just, you don't see too big of a whisker and you see your median right down the middle. All right. And then positively skewed, which is kind of what we had in that last one, where our median is close to that short whisker here. Okay, so 50% of the data is packed into this little area here, and then the rest of it's pretty well spread out. This positively skews, and again, back to here. In a negatively skewed graph, our median, our middle value is somewhere over here, and because most of the data is packed up here, our median's getting pulled back by these guys. All right, I kind of already talked about that. So this is what you're looking for, and that's going to help you decide what type of data you're going to use. You can do this by looking at a box and whisker or looking at a histogram. It doesn't matter either way, as long as you can tell me whether it's negatively or positively skewed, and the big idea is skewed at all. It doesn't really matter if it's positive or negative or if it's symmetric. Okay, so we got to choose appropriate statistics. If the data is skewed, you're going to use a 5-number summary. That's a box and whisker. Okay, I'll explain that in just a second. That's where you're going to scroll on here on your calculator. If the data is symmetric, we're going to use that mean and standard deviation. So we're still going to use the calculator to find that. In fact, it's all in the same spot. You just have to push down to get to the 5-number summary numbers. All right. So a 5-number summary is the minimum, the maximum, the median, and the quartile 1 and 3. So essentially your box and whisker values. Okay. You're going to look for this number. You're going to look for the median, the lower quartile, the upper, and the maximum. So all 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your book often does do the range, which is the subtraction of these two, but these two are 2 of the numbers in the 5-number summary. All right. If you want to look at this a little closer, hit pause. And again, your data has to be in order. All right. So here is the one we're going to try together. All right. I'm going to pause it, get everything entered in, and then we're going to take a look at it, and we'll do one more after that. All right, so I'm going to check the distribution. All right, if it's skewed at all, I'm going to use a 5-number summary, and if it is symmetric, I'm going to use the standard deviation and the mean to measure, use the measure. So, second stat plot, I got to set up. My plots are on. I am going to use a histogram. So I'm going to change that to a histogram down and then here. And I'm going to zoom 9 that. And there it is. So again, I kind of look like up early and then slowly down, kind of drop off again. So I'm going to say that this value, like these ones aren't always, this one looks skewed to me. Most of the data is over here. There's a little bit out here. I might even want to look at a histogram just to make sure. Right, and we're gonna zoom 9. So there, man, that's right down the middle there, but we're definitely have some outliers. I'm going to say we're skewed here, so I'm going to use a 5-number summary. All right, so I entered in the data. I'm looking at the data. That's not totally obvious, but I definitely have a long whisker. Look, appears that this is slightly closer to the long whisker, not much, but it's close. It's pretty close to symmetrical too, to be honest with you. But I'm going to say it's skewed. All right. Let me go back here, and that's kind of got the same thing. They said it's symmetric. All right, so maybe I entered in some data wrong, but theirs looks a little more symmetric than mine does, which is fine. So I guess we'll use the 5-number summary. All right, so I'm going to go back here to my calculator, and I'm going to do stat calculate, and my 5-number summary is. The mean is 26 and the standard deviation is 7. Okay, there were 36 entries. So that's what I would write down for my answer. The mean is 26 and it was 7, and I would probably draw that histogram on my paper here. All right, I got less than a minute, so I want to show you that last example. All right, the last example is definitely skewed. I'm going to pause it and get everything set up. All right, so I entered the data and it came out like this. So we have that kind of gradual increase and then not much left at the end. All right, so this is negatively skewed. The important thing is it's skewed, so we got to do a 5-number summary. That's stat, calculate, and here's what we're looking for. All right, pause this video right now. So right here we have the 5 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is our 5-number summary. I hope this video helps, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.